Hello and welcome back. I'm Dan, the Neuro Man May, and this is where we change the system. Nice to have you with me again, folks. So, welcome to the Neurodivergence podcast, where we talk about neurodivergence and the world and systems in which we're expected to fit into. And today we are going to talk about the power of different minds. Different minds see things differently. That is the main point here. They notice patterns, they notice details, things that necessarily other people wouldn't notice because sometimes different minds ask that one key thing, that one word, and that's why. That is the one question that matters. There have been several cases over the years of famous people renowned for their different thinking and who were suspected of being neurodivergent. And I think the most famous of those different thinkers was Albert Einstein. Now, Einstein himself had struggled with traditional schooling and rigid instruction for most of his childhood. He was a man who thought visually and conceptually rather than step by step. And being a different mind, his achievement was helping reshape our understanding of time and space. And that's the key, folks. Different thinking allowed him to question what others accepted as normal. Another great example is Vincent van Gogh. He experienced intense emotional and sensory differences. He created bold, expressive art that broke conventions. Sadly, it was only after his unfortunate death that he was recognised as a genius. His greatest strength was his unique perception of the world. Thomas Edison. He was often described as having traits linked to ADHD. As a man, he was restless, curious, constantly experimenting. Held over 1,000 patents. So what made him a different thinker? Well, it was his can't still mindset that drove relentless innovation, which ultimately led to the invention of the light bulb. And one interesting person who I did some research on recently, given my love of murder mysteries, was Agatha Christie, whom some of you will know as the writer of Hercule Poirot, Miss Marple. It was thought that she had dyslexia because she struggled with writing mechanics but excelled in storytelling. And yet, she didn't let those barriers get in the way. She still became one of the best selling authors ever. Only the Bible and Shakespeare are as widely read as her books. And the key thing with Agatha Christie was that a difficulty in one area didn't limit brilliance in another. And finally, another prime example of the power of different minds was Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. He was known for his intense focus, his perfectionism, his unconventional thinking. He combined technology with art and design and revolutionized personal computing and smartphones. So, what made him different? What gave him the power? He saw connections others missed and changed entire industries. So, Why and what is so important about the power of different minds, folks? Because when it comes to neurodivergence, we do think differently. Because innovation comes from challenge. Progress happens when someone questions the obvious. Old problems are often solved by new perspectives because different brains notice patterns that others overlook. Diversity, it strengthens teams, it mixes thinking styles that leads to better outcomes. But unfortunately, particularly for neurodivergent people, these strengths aren't always visible in school. And I mentioned this in my previous podcast that many systems reward just one type of thinking only. Okay? Neurodivergent thinking brings creativity, focus, and perspective. And those are the things that matter, folks. But we know that these strengths aren't always recognized, right? Because they're not typical strengths. And I feel that this causes a great deal of problems in childhood because you're constantly being told by your teachers, mentors, lecturers, that's not how we do things here. That's not the way to do it. You do it this way. And being a neurodivergent person, I do feel neurotypical people are very contradictive. You know, they constantly want to challenge us in a way that sometimes frustrates us because we were taught how to do one thing a certain way, so our mindset becomes very fixed. We're set in our ways in terms of, okay, that's how you do it, but this is how I do it. And that follows neurodivergent people in every aspect of their life, whether it's cooking with their partner or helping a friend with work or writing something. Because everyone has a different writing style, everyone has a different way of working, a certain order of doing things as well. Some people might want to do the easy task before the hard task. Some people might want to take on the hard task before doing the easy one. And that's what makes the world go round, folks. That's what makes us all different, you know? But different thinking can move things forward. And although there's been a lot of progression in terms of rewarding different thinkers, because we have them, folks, they're in our lives. We have Temple Grandin, we have Greta Thunberg, you know, Pete Warmby, Alex Partridge. All of these important advocates we have that are coming to fruition right now are prime examples of different thinking. And we're not here to promote any kind of cult or religion or force it down people's throats. We want people to understand. We want people to recognize that our thinking is important. Our way of thinking is valuable to neurotypical people. Because if we don't put ourselves out there, when is the system ever going to change? It's not, is it? It's going to be exactly the same. The same uneven structure, the same set of unwritten rules, the same amount of ambiguity. It's never going to get better, folks. And this is what needs to change. Things need to change for the better. Because we need the power of different minds. We can't disregard them because they have just as much value to add to the world as a neurotypical person. But unfortunately, I know I've made reference to this previously, the world was not designed for different minds, which is why neurodivergent people really, really struggle with this. We struggle to fit in. And the issue that we have with neurotypical people is that they do not like it when neurodivergent people ask why. Why are we having this meeting? Why are you giving us extra work? Why are you giving me more responsibility and not paying me for it? Why is it okay for that person to behave that way, but it's not okay for me to behave that way? And I've had situations like this that have escalated in the past in employments. When I worked for an insurance company a couple of years ago, there would be times where, and again, this was my way of trying to fit in. The power of different minds, so to speak. It's doing things in such a way that makes you accepted and makes you want to fit in, and that could be either doing a funny voice or telling a joke, but unfortunately that joke backfires because some people see it as inappropriate. And yet when another person, a neurotypical person, does an impersonation or a funny voice or acts out of character or makes fun of another person, it seems to be acceptable. And I've always felt that it's the neurodivergent person that's more severely reprimanded. But what employers don't realise is that we don't realise what it is that we've done wrong. How did we get to this stage? Why am I being told off for something that was harmless? Certainly, in my eyes, it was just a joke. What harm can a joke do? I've not killed anybody. I've not committed any horrible offence. I've not stolen from anybody. I've not affected anyone's life, their wage packet. What's the problem here? And again, it harkens back to the unwritten rules. And the line isn't always clear, folks, with neurodivergent people. We don't know where the line is drawn a lot of the time, but we always try and cross it, be it deliberately or undeliberately, because we have no filter. We try, we really, really try, but again, we're battling with the whole concept of masking. What am I going to do today that is socially acceptable? What can I contribute to society today that will make me be accepted and be listened to? And I can remember when I was at school, it must have been, oh, I'm guessing it was year 10, possibly towards the beginning of year 11. We had to do a team building exercise in our English lesson, and it involved doing some charts, I think, and we all put our names down in terms of skills, capability, all that kind of thing. And I think it summed up basically, would you have this person on your team? And I can remember someone in my class did me, and I just got zero, pretty much 0 out of 10 for all in terms of what they were looking for and if they would have me on their team. That hurts. The fact that, because this was something that had followed me even in primary school, when it came to sports, for example, which I was never very good at, rounders in particular, because I was always picked last. I was always the person that was picked last. I was never picked first. Um, I was never valued when it came to sports. I didn't. That was where the fear of not fitting in, I think, came from, because it was acknowledged that I thought differently, but it wasn't seen as powerful. It was seen as a hindrance to neurotypical people in my year. So, of course, that led to bullying and, you know, refusing to come into school, refusing to um, participate in group activity. And in a way, that was trauma. That was trauma for me. And I think that's where my lack of self esteem came from, the not feeling included. Because later on in life, when I did feel included, I didn't want to feel included. I think because I felt that eventually the mask is going to come off and they're not going to like what they see. Once they see me as my authentic self, it won't be accepted. However, there has been times where I have been my authentic self and it's been accepted. However, 9 times out of 10, it's accepted by people who are also neurodivergent or have relatives who are neurodivergent, their brother, their sister, etc. So they understand that that I don't have malicious intentions, that I didn't mean to say things in this way. I'm just being me. There is nothing harmful or threatening about this person. And there have been times when I have been very supportive of others and I've been very compassionate towards them whenever they've had a bad day at work or they've had things going on in their life. And it's been accepted. I've been seen as a valuable member of the workplace, although it's very rare. But I think that's due to me not going for the right job positions, which I'm hoping to change. Um, and that's what it's all about, folks. This is we shouldn't be made to feel bad for noticing things that other people don't see. We should be valued for that, and that's ultimately what the power of different minds is all about. The ability to see beyond the external. Okay, and the sooner neurotypical people can see that, the more the system will change that we're expected to function in and thrive. Okay? So, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, folks. Next week, we're going to be talking about our differences and that our differences are not the problem. Okay? So, nice to have you with me again, folks. And if there's anything I'd like you to take away today, it's to remember that the problem is not you, it's the system. Take care.